Hello, my name is Dr. Arthur Mcunu. I've dedicated my life to providing surgical care to patients with heart disease. My life began in the slums of Soweto in South Africa, where I learned to overcome adversity and illnesses, including the death of my best friend. That's why I want to be a resource for you and your family for consultation related to heart and cardiovascular needs. You can learn more about me by visiting my website, which is at zuluchaskada.com.
Thank you very much. Hey folks out there in TV land, welcome to another edition of the Roland GRIMES Sports and Entertainment Show. And as always, I'd like for you to join me in welcoming my co-host, Mr. Self-Empowerment. Ladies and gentlemen, put your hands together for Mr. Wilbert Skipper. And as always, we have a dynamite, very unique show for you today. These two gentlemen, actually I had the fortune of spending some time, Skip and I had the fortune of spending some time with them over the last several weeks. We've gotten to know a lot about health in a very, very interesting way. The gentleman to my near left is Dr. Arthur N.S. Mcunu, and he is the Director of Cardiothoracic Surgery at Howard University Hospital. He hails from South Africa, and he has more than a compelling story. He actually has an extraordinary story to tell. If you would join me very quickly in welcoming, putting your hands together for Dr. Arthur Mcunu. And what would Batman be without Robin? So the gentleman to my far left, that distinguished good-looking fella over there with the beard, is Mr. Darren Heath. He is Mr. or Dr. Mcunu's primary assistant. He has so many roles and so many titles that I can't even fit him on a teleprompter. So he's going to tell you all about them in a few minutes. Ladies and gentlemen, put your hands together for Mr. Darren Heath. All right, folks, hey, I'm going to start out. We're going to jump right into it. I'm going to go right into it with Dr. Mcunu. I'm going to start by asking you this question as we move forward. I just established the fact that you're a cardiothoracic surgeon.
Correct.
What the heck is that?
Well, that's a good question. Cardiothoracic surgery is an open heart surgeon. So I perform open heart surgery. But the thoracic part of what I do is chest surgery, which means that I operate on the lungs and every other diseases that affect the lungs as well as the heart.
Okay. So I used to tell jokes when I was a kid about, heart surgeons, and I'm having this. So I'm sitting next to you. This is for real. So how long have you been involved with this very interesting endeavor, Dr. Mcunu?
Well, I trained at Howard. I did my general surgery at Howard. I finished there in '93. And then at that point, I decided I wanted to be a heart surgeon. So I took some time and went to Michigan for training. And I finished my fellowship training in 2001. So from 2001 to the present time, I've been functioning as an attending surgeon in cardiothoracic surgery.
Man, that's exciting. Mr. Darren, now how did he lasso you into this endeavor with him, or were you already on that path when he met you?
Well, I've been doing cardiac surgery since 1990, and been pretty much in the metropolitan area. And was working at one of the area hospitals, and I received a phone call that they had brought in Dr. Mcunu, and they wanted to continue to develop the heart program there. And so I thought it was a good opportunity to jump in. I like building, starting from the beginning and creating. So it was a good opportunity for me to join, and it was a very good decision for me.
Okay.
So when we talk about, or as Roland has said, Batman and Robin. So I'm the Robin to Batman. You're the Robin to Batman. So we know what our roles are and what we do.
Right.
But let me ask you this. When do you get zoned out, or do you get zoned out when you and Dr. Mcunu are performing these surgeries? Now, obviously, Darren played basketball many years ago, just like myself. It's a little different from playing basketball, but when we play basketball or football like Roland played, you tend to get zoned out. You have to get zoned out sometime in order to be effective.
Man, I don't know nobody zoning out. I'm not sure. Okay, I'm gonna let you go with this.
Please let me.
But dude, if you zone, don't let me know you zone. Okay.
Well, and my reason for asking this question is because I'm trying to wrap my mind around, you know, the important role that you guys play in a lot of people's lives. I mean, you guys saved lives. You saved lives, and you saved lives by performing this specialized surgery. So at what point, and this is a question for both you and Dr. Mcunu, at what point do you get zoned out? Is it when you first do the first incision? Is it when you get inside and you're starting to repair the arteries or the valves or whatever? I think I sound like I know what I'm talking about, but if I don't, please correct me. But when do you guys get zoned out, Darren and Dr. Mcunu?
Well, for me, you know, as you, most of you all don't know that Skip and I have a history. We met on the basketball court back in college.
At half court.
At half court, battling over a ball. And I don't know who won.
Neither do I.
But I'm going to say me.
Okay, so we go with that.
We've been friends ever since, but Skip can relate to the fact that when you're in the middle of the game, you can have 500 people, you can have 5,000 people or more. But when you're in the middle of that game, your head is in that game, you tend to kind of drown out your periphery. And so for me, when it comes to surgery, once that patient's on the table, patient is draped, and we get started, it's like everything else just ceases, and I'm focused. I mean, it's just, you know, that's just how I function.
Now, for the people that don't know and what drape means, what does drape mean?
I'm sorry. Obviously, we're dealing with a sterile environment.
Okay.
Patient is properly prepped and draped with sterile drapes that only expose the sites that we're going to be operating, you know, on and opening. So once that patient is draped, then I'm in that zone, that same zone.
Dr. Mcunu?
Yeah, and I think I get what you're saying with the zoning out, because your facial expression betrays the cringe factor. Like, you're about to cut into somebody's. You see
So when you tell Roland that I deserve support.
I cringed, man. When you said it, I was like, oh.
So I understand what you're saying. For me, you know, the biggest thing here to note is that, you know, when you do open heart surgery, you have to do it in a certain sequential way all the time. And I've trained myself to do that. And I always recall, I don't know, some of you may be familiar with DC General Hospital. That's where I actually discovered my passion to be a heart surgeon, and I read about it in the book, where I actually had an opportunity to do open heart massage, and the gentleman that was brought into the emergency room, you remember the stories where they would drop somebody off in the ER and then take off?
Right, to leave them there.
So
this actually happened.
This happened to me, and I was a secondary resident at Howard. This guy was dropped off, and he had multiple gunshot wounds. And basically, he was essentially dead on arrival. So when we took him to the ER, they gave me an opportunity to do an open heart massage. And when we performed the procedure, I held his heart in my hands. I experienced a sensation that I've never ever been able to reciprocate. That's when I knew that this is my calling. I was called to do this. And every single day that I go into that OR is like the first time. It never gets old. And I've done hundreds of open heart surgical procedures, and it just feels the same way.
That is amazing. Look, we're going to take a break in a second, but before we do, Darren, real quick, the first thing, what is the first thing that you have to do when you walk into the OR and it's time for one of these procedures? And I'm sure there are multiple variations of procedures, but what is one of the first things that you have to do when you walk into the OR and it's time?
One of my responsibilities, obviously, as first assistant of Dr. Mcunu, is I want to make sure that he has all the instrumentation, that he has all the equipment that's needed for the procedure to go. Patients on the table, all the lines are placed, and that everything is just moving forward as it's supposed to move. He has the films available so that we can view anything if we need to review during the course of the case. Everything is in the room that he needs. And then the next step is obviously the patient, getting the patient positioned, Foley catheter, all the arterial lines and everything are in place, arterial markers in case we have to do anything else. and then the draping, and then we get started.
Hey folks, I'm humbled right now. So
I am too.
I'm Roland Grimes from the Roland Bubba Grimes from the Roland Grimes Sports and Entertainment Show. Getting a little education. We're gonna get into it a little bit deeper when we return. We're gonna take a break for a few minutes, get ourselves back together. We'll see you in a few minutes. Hold tight. Thank you. Thank you, folks. Thank you. We're actually going to change the name of the show to the Roland Grimes Not Just Sports and Entertainment Show, because obviously we're dealing with some real life changing and life evolving issues as we're talking to Dr. Arthur Mcunu, the author of the book, The Zulu Chess Cutter. We're going to get into that in a little bit, but let's go back. Darren, you told me a little bit about what you have to do as you begin one of these procedures before we took our break. Dr. Mcunu, what is the first thing that you have to do after Darren does his piece? You come in, tell us a little bit about this transition.
Sure. And Darren is, to say that he's a Robin, I think is underestimating his value.
No, I heard he was a bad dude.
No, he's a bad dude.
Thank you, Dr. Mcunu. You just changed. No more Robin for me, buddy. Whatever Dr. Mcunu says with Darren, I'm getting the same tag. Thank you, Dr. Mcunu. And audience, you all heard it. So it's recorded. He can't say that it didn't happen.
Okay, you got it. You've been underestimated.
I've been underestimated.
Okay,
That's
this
not
is
right.
good. Cato.
Dr. Mcunu, is that something?
To Green Hornet. All right. Thanks for that, man. So what's one of the first things? What's one of the first things that you have to do when you approach this opportunity?
So once we have a patient in the room and everything is in place and anesthesia has completed their part, we generally take a pause to make sure that we are there for the reason that is stated in the patient's consent. And for my part of the operation, let's assume I'm doing a bypass operation that day. The patient has blockages in the heart arteries. So while Darren is started with getting the vein, we actually get a vein now with minimal approach, just like gallbladder surgery. Now you can actually make small holes. We can make a small incision and harvest the vein in the leg, which we're going to use to perform the bypasses. So Darren does that. He does an excellent job. I don't have to look up while he's getting that done. So that's my comfort. That's part of my peace of mind, knowing that he's got that taken care of.
Man, you know my stomach's growling.
So my part of that point would be to make an incision in the chest so I can gain access to the heart. That allows us we do separate the breastbone, so it's a little involved, and then I actually get the vessels that I need inside or underneath the breastbone that I'm going to use to perform the bypass. And to do this operation, we have to put the patient on what we call a heart-lung machine. So that allows me to safely stop the heart for a certain period of time so we can be able to perform the bypasses.
Okay. Now, I'm going to go there. I don't know if you guys noticed, but you're black. And when I was growing up and I was watching Dr. Marcus Welby and a bunch of other folks who were performing these kind of operations, very few of them actually looked like you, Darren, and very few of them actually looked like you. So somewhere along the line, when you decided this is what you wanted to do, I'm sure there were some folks along the way who said, you have lost your minds, and there's no way that you should be doing this, because first of all, no one wants you operating on them, or they're not used to having people that look like you operating on them. What were some of those challenges, and what were some of those constraints that were placed on you as you were moving in this direction, and how did you overcome them? Be very honest and very frank as much as you can. Let's talk about it. Darren, I'll start with you.
Well, for myself, as long as I can remember, I really didn't have too much diversity as far as what I wanted to do. It was one of two things. I wanted to play basketball or get into medicine. Wasn't into, I want to be a policeman and want to be a fireman. I really pretty much was wanted to be a doctor. I even had that little game Operation, everybody remembers that.
Take out Rake's ankle or something. You remember that.
Yeah, I'm
trying to get past the light bulb.
Yeah, I'm showing my age right now, right? But as far as any, hurdles that I had to overcome, coming up through school, yes, it wasn't it's prevalent to see African American physicians or African Americans in that kind of position doing these kinds of surgeries. But I don't know if it was because of the environment that I grew up in, or the support of my parents, my family. It just didn't. I didn't let it slow me down. I didn't let it stop me. If this person could do it, I can do it. It didn't matter to me what the color of their skin was. I was learning the same, material in school that they were, and as long as I was producing the grades, then I should have a right to be able to do it. So I kept going and going and going as far as I could till I'm here today.
Okay. Now, Dr. Mcunu, your challenges were a little bit different. Let's talk about it.
Well, I grew up in South Africa. When you were growing up in South Africa, I always knew I wanted to be a physician. For me, becoming a physician hit me when I was 9. I had a cousin who died prematurely, and so I sort of wrapped my mind around doing that. And then when I was almost 13 years old, during the riots in South Africa, my best friend was shot, and I held him in my arms as he died with a gunshot wound, ironically, to the heart. He actually died from a bullet that was centered right over his heart. And I remember just going to his funeral, just days not remembering who I was, and my mother said I talked about nothing else after that except to be a heart surgeon. Or to be a physician, rather, to be a surgeon. And so what you have to understand from my standpoint is that in South Africa, as a black person, we were not allowed by law to become surgeons. It was against the law that existed in the land.
The law?
It was
This is during the
apartheid, yes.
Okay.
So during apartheid, it was against the law for me to become a surgeon. And I kept running to roadblocks about trying to move forward in medicine. Little did I understand that God had a different plan for me, a different strategy that ultimately led me to this country. So when I did come to America, I was fortunate enough that my medical training took place at Howard, so I saw a lot of people who looked like me. And the guy who actually inspired me to become a heart surgeon was from Jamaica. So here's the funny part, though. When I finished my cardiothoracic surgery training, guess where I went? I went to West Virginia.
Yeah, that's funny.
So,
We went from Howard to West Virginia. Hilarious.
So for an entire, almost 4 years that I was there, I was the only black physician in West Virginia. And
You were the only black person in West Virginia.
well, I brought my kids with me, so.
All right, all three of you.
So here's the interesting part about that, is that when I went there and I distinguished myself, all of a sudden everybody was seeking me out. The color of my skin made very little difference to them. It became a situation where I was operating on generations
Oh, that's beautiful.
of heart disease. And what I discovered that is would surprise some people is that we all look alike inside. We look the same. The heart, the arteries are connected the same way. So all of those accidents that we use to try to set each other apart are just that.
And they only exist at the skin.
Absolutely.
And I mean, literally.
Literally, yes.
Wow. Okay, so as you can see, folks, this is a very interesting set, very educational. We're going to continue the educational piece here. Now let's talk about Howard University Hospital.
Yes.
You guys are doing some magnificent things at Howard University Hospital, and you are continuously saving lives. What are some of the challenges, if any, that you're seeing? Of course, we know Howard University is a historic hospital, and right next to Howard University, the campus. What are some of the challenges, if any, that you're finding in regards to this?
Skip, I'm glad you asked that question. You know what? Cooney just told me that we have to take a station.
And we have to listen to
And
it.
we're getting ready to show Dr. Mcunu's commercial. So, hey, folks, we're going to hold that thought real quick. We're going to come back to it and talk a little bit more about Howard University Hospital. Roland Ground Sports Entertainment Show. We'll be right back at you in a few minutes. You are the best audience that God ever made. God bless you all.
Absolutely.
Look
Amen
here.
for you.
Back with Dr. Mcunu, Darren, Heath. Skip, you were asking about Howard University Hospital.
Yes, well, this question is for both Dr. Mcunu and Darren. We know that you guys are doing some wonderful things at Howard University Hospital. You guys need to be applauded for what you do, obviously. You're saving lives every day. What are some of the challenges, if any, that you guys see on a daily basis in regards to what you do as it relates to the patient and also the procedure?
One of the biggest challenges that we face is reputation, of course. And you know, you hit on it when you mentioned some of the challenges that we face. And sometimes part of the challenges is that we have to, some of the patients do not feel that there's a connection, or the reputation for Howard University has somewhat eroded with the community. So we are trying to revitalize that. And what I'd like to do is to start to educate people about the outcomes that we've been able to come up with. Our biggest competition is up the street is Hospital Center, you guys know that, and then up behind us is Adventist Hospital. And what has not been told is what we're trying to make people aware of is that since we've been there, since Darren and we started the program in 2009, our outcomes are actually better than most of the physicians in DC area.
And you actually did work, I think, at what, Adventist or?
At Providence. So I do Providence, but our outcomes are better than that.
Really?
And that's important for people to know that, because that's going to instill some of the confidence. You have to understand that one of the challenges that we face as a community is their disparate outcomes in healthcare. Okay. We still have, for instance, women are still trying to catch up to men. If you're a minority, you're still trying to catch up to the majority of the population. So we still have a lot of those. So along every disease category, we perform poorly compared to the majority. And that's in part a reason that we need to be able to penetrate and educate some more.
Okay, so in education we have the math and science gap. We have the technological gap. Right. And we have a health gap there?
Yes.
Yeah, we do have a health gap. Touching on what Dr. Mcunu said, it's about the information, getting the information out there. The community itself, I mean, we're in the heart of DC. We do have two other established institutions that are right nearby, our neighbors up the street. But still, it comes down to the community and getting the awareness out there as to, number one, what Howard University Hospital has to offer. I'm not touting this just because it's the program that I'm a part of. It's just a fact. You know, the way that we're established, the results. Dr. Mcunu is being actually humble in the fact that the results that we do have are dealing with patients that also have multiple comorbidities. And what I mean by comorbidities, I mean they're coming in with more than one health issue,
like diabetes,
at a time.
and
exactly, obesity as well. And to be able to produce these kind of results that we've been able to do is, I think, extremely, you know, great, to be honest with you.
Is some of that comorbidity actually just related to the quote-unquote minority population that you often see?
Yes, you can see that. Again, it's about the information. We need to learn how to eat better. We need to learn how to take care of our bodies better. The information is out there. Unfortunately, there's still a number of us that don't know where to go to get this information. So personally, I see us as a resource, also as a beacon. Dr. Mcunu touched on the fact of the reputation. Well, we're trying to change that reputation. If it has to start with us in the cardiac surgery program, then so be it. But we are producing the results that can, you know, that can represent the fact that yes, Howard is a quality hospital, a quality institution that provides better than just quality care and gives better than just quality outcomes.
Well, one of the things that we are going to do, folks, and I want to make it perfectly clear, on the Roland Grimes Sports Entertainment Show, we believe in doing what's right. And the right thing to do is to follow Dr. Mcunu and Darren in their practice at Howard University. One of the things that we're going to be doing is bringing more awareness to what they do. So please stay tuned. By all means, go to our website, www.rolandgrimesshow.com.
Okay. And also, as we get into this a little bit more, Eugene Heller's is going to return, and he's going to spend a little time with Dr. Mcunu, and we're going to talk about some of that preventive care, especially from the perspective of a person who's involved with fitness and nutrition on a consistent basis. Before we wrap up, I want to go back for a second, and I want to talk a little bit about your childhood. You have a book out. Tell us about your book.
My book is titled Zulu Chest Cutter. And by birth, I'm a Zulu. So in South Africa, we are divided into different tribes. So I was born into the Zulu tribe, which is our native language as a Zulu. So as I was embarking on this journey and I decided to chronicle it, the idea for the book came through my daughter, who is actually a medical school at Howard. She's a third year medical student at Howard. The idea for the book came from a discussion that I had with her. When I was trying to explain to her some of the challenges that I experienced when I was her age, growing up in South Africa, for instance, there were times when I had to sleep for nights on a tree, perched on the tree to try to escape being taken and detained by the South African Defense Force. She could not relate to that. Her mind just could not wrap around that. And I realized that the best way to immortalize that experience would be to put it in print. So that's how the idea was conceived, so that she could read about it. So that's, when I finished the book, we were deciding on a title, and she actually helped in this regard as well. And we came up with several options, and at the end of the day, because what I love to do, what I was called to do, what I feel anointed to do is open heart surgery. It's just what I do. I decided to just capture that in the title of the book and incorporate where I come from as an allegiance to all the struggles that I had to overcome to get to this point, and so it became Zulu Chest Cutter.
Now in the book you chronicle a situation in the book where you were in school, and there was a male dorm, so to speak, and a female dorm, and there were warring factions. There was Nelson Mandela's, and this is toward the end of apartheid, and there was another group, and this particular group, for whatever reason, did not have a very favorable perception of the students that were at the school.
Right.
And they decided one night to come in and wreak havoc, to say the least. However, somehow, not only were you aware of it, but I guess the alarm kind of sounded somehow for you, and you were able to avoid this situation. But here's the thing, it's in the book, so tell us a little bit about that experience,
Sure.
and then I want to dovetail something about that after you finish.
Sure. I did go to University of Zululand, and that's where this occurred. And we had some political faction. There's Nelson Mandela and Chief Buthelezi. The scene, I actually stayed with one of my cousins. In South Africa, when your last name is Mcunu, Smith, those names, that's a family name. So I had a cousin who was kind enough to take me into his dorm room. And he actually belonged to that organization. And he gave me some cryptic warnings about the impending visit by this gentleman whose idea was to come in and kill all the students while they slept. So his entire agenda was to destroy us. And fortunately, that morning, two things happened. One, I got up early, and several of us got up earlier. And the second thing is that it was cold. So the buses that were bringing his group to the campus were stalled because of the weather. And so by the time they did arrive to campus, about 7, 8 o'clock in the morning, we could see them coming from a distance. And my friends and I, we actually ran up to the hills to try to escape, and we saw these guys with their spears and their garb basically going to the dorms, especially the women's dorms. Some women were harassed and were attacked while some of them they were walking up from sleep in various states of undress or dress, as it were. These guys were merciless. They didn't care. The shrieks and the screams did not deter them. At the end of the day, several students lay dead. And by the time I actually returned back to the campus, we had nothing but blood stains all over the walls from the students that had been slaughtered, attacked, all this stuff.
And we're going to wrap up. But as I read that section, the one thing that came to mind is I think of, Skip and I, we talk often about growing up in Southeast Washington, and we hear a lot about some of the challenges that we have, especially in inner city communities, United States of America. And we say this is one of the reasons why we have these health gaps and these technology gaps, these math and science gaps. But when I go back and I read Dr. Mcunu's book, and I realize that with all the challenges that we had in Washington, D.C. and Southeast, it was nothing compared to what this guy went through. And he was able to overcome it, rise above it, and ultimately become a heart surgeon. So I'm trying to think what's the excuse for the rest of us. Hey folks, I'm Roland Bubba Grimes. This is the Roland Grimes Sports Entertainment Show. Dr. Arthur Mcunu, Darren Smith, on behalf of my co-host, Mr. Self-Empowerment, Wilbur Skipper, I want to thank you gentlemen for joining us. The dog wants to thank you. Hey folks.
Mr. Darren Heath.
Roland Bubba Grimes, Roland Grimes Sports Entertainment Show. We'll see you again soon. Thank you and have a great evening.